Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar presented by AuctionMethod. My name is Daniel West. I am one of the co-founders of AuctionMethod. Today, we're going to be talking about chargeback mitigation for online auctioneers. This is something that I've known about for a while because I used to be an auctioneer myself with my family's auction business at West Auctions. That business is now in the capable hands of my sister and other competent professionals, but I'm sure that they still deal with credit card chargebacks. Since then, in my work at AuctionMethod, I've had to work with many different auction companies in dealing with the issue of credit card chargebacks. So much so that AuctionMethod has now created its own chargeback mitigation program that we offer to customers. It's a free service for those who use our Fiserv program, and it's a paid service for those who don't. And in that work, I've learned a lot about fraud and credit card fraud and how to deal with the risks and how to reduce some of the risks. So, without further ado, happy Halloween, by the way, everybody. Today is Friday, Halloween, and this is a pretty scary subject, right? The chargebacks. I think it seems appropriate. All right. So, yeah, let's go ahead. We don't need to be on this screen here. So, what we're going to be covering today. Well, first we're going to talk about why chargeback matters. We're going to do a little bit of definition between the different kinds of chargeback issues that we see. So we have what we call friendly fraud, and we have like real credit card fraud. Uh, from the auctioneer's point of view, fraud is fraud is fraud, but we'll get to that. We're going to talk about how to deal with how to prevent issues by flagging suspicious bidders and dealing with bidders during registration and prior to the bidding. Um, because chargeback disputes are largely about paper trails, we're going to spend a decent amount of time talking about that, about how to have a process that creates evidence in advance. Um, and we're going to talk about when you do have a dispute, when you finally get a chargeback, how to respond to it. And last but not least, we're going to talk about some things that you can do this week to change your policies, to work on your software platform. Actually, it says I'm going to cover real cases, wins, and mistakes, but no, I don't think we have time for that. But I do have some helpful resources if you stay until the end. I have one in particular I think you're really going to like, and so I hope that you'll stay with us. We'll have a Q&A at the end. And so along the way, if you have questions, feel free to type them into Zoom, and I'll do my best to respond to them at the end. All right. So, yeah, what we're going to talk about first is friendly fraud versus true fraud. So you may not have heard these terms before, but if you've been doing credit card transactions in the online auction world at all, you have probably experienced both. Most of what auctioneers are experiencing nowadays is friendly fraud. This is called first party fraud. There's nothing friendly about it. That's a misnomer. I don't know where they came up with that stupid name, but there's nothing friendly about this kind of fraud, and it is pervasive. It's on the rise. It's happening more and more and more, so we need to pay attention to it. This is where the cardholder themselves is disputing transactions. These are legitimate purchases, and for whatever reason, they're saying, I didn't authorize that transaction. It wasn't me, or I didn't get it. These kinds of issues um, happen all the time. And unfortunately, they oftentimes win these cases because auctioneers don't know what they're doing. We're going to try to deal with that. The other type of fraud that we encounter, of course, is what they call true credit card fraud, third-party fraud. These are stolen credit cards, right? Somebody skimmed off a credit card number or has stolen a credit card. And of course, then they use that, they run up charges on it, and then afterward, the legitimate cardholder disputes the charge. And so in both cases, you're left holding the bag if you lose the charge back. So, if you're doing online auctions, chances are that you're operating in what's known as a card not present environment. That means that you're not swiping a physical credit card for these transactions. Someone's just typing the credit card information in, and that's being stored hopefully safely and with PCI compliance. But even so, the actual card's not present, and so there's more potential for abuse in these environments. It's a higher fraud risk, and there are a lot more disputes. It's harder to dispute a transaction when somebody comes and swipes their credit card, right? And especially if you check their ID and stuff. Um, Card not present environments are important to online auctioneers. You don't always want to have to swipe credit cards. And so we have to figure out a way to make sure that we reduce the risk of fraud in these card not present environments. So what happens? Well, traditionally, buyer remorse is part of the problem. People, of course, everybody knows people bid at an auction and then they regret their purchases or regret their bids, and they want to get out of it. That's part of the problem, but that's not the real problem that I see. The biggest issue that I see is people saying that they didn't authorize the transaction and that they didn't receive their purchases even though they did. And in many cases, they're saying that what they received is not what was described. So that shows up quite a lot. These the scammers are on the rise, partially because of social media. So there's all kinds of sort of tips and tricks for scammers, how to take advantage of not just auctioneers, but all types of weak business systems. Knowledge about the dispute resolution process and how chargebacks works is on the rise among scammers, and they're out looking for prey, right? And if you don't have all your ducks in an order in a row, then there's a good chance that you're going to be a target of one of these chargeback attacks. And the bad thing is that once they identify you as a weak business, they're going to come after you again and again and again. So if you get one chargeback and you lose it, chances are you're going to have more coming soon. That's the bad news. Good news is there's some stuff that you can do to prevent the damage. The worst part about all of this is that the banks will usually side with the cardholders. So statistics say that merchants are winning about 8% of these disputes when they fight. So there's a good reason for you to get all your ducks in a row there. Um, I have seen successes where I thought a merchant wasn't going to be successful, and it's because they follow the tips and tricks that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So, so the three tells here, I thought I'd just give some tips on distinguishing between friendly fraud versus true fraud. So if somebody says that the transaction was unauthorized, um, but they've been using that card in your system before. So somebody has used their credit card to purchase from you before, but then one of the transactions they say, "Oh no, I didn't. Someone must have hacked my account. That wasn't me." Um, that's usually friendly fraud. One of the reasons why it's important to kind of distinguish here is because the type of fraud it is will inform how you handle the dispute, what information you provide as compelling evidence. So yeah, if they say, that they didn't get it, even though they did get it, that's friendly fraud, clearly. But if there's somebody who is out of your local area who needs you to rush the shipping to a different address or wants a friend to pick up their purchases, and this is somebody brand new, not local, there's a very good chance that that's a true credit card fraud. Oftentimes these people will show up from states away, and they'll buy high value items and then they'll want you to ship it to a different address, or they'll be sending some third party to pick up. So those are some of the tells on the type of fraud that you're dealing with. All right. So what do you do ahead of time? Well, there's a number of different things that you can do when people are registering or getting approved. When you're qualifying your bidders, I think is the best way to put that. And I'm going to give you the simplest trick first. This is going to be the most effective thing, and that is call them. This is unusual in today's e-commerce environment. Most people who operate, do business online, they don't expect someone from Amazon or from any of the other online e-commerce websites to call them up and introduce themselves. But you are not a standard e-commerce site. You are an online auctioneer. Usually, you're a small independent owner operator. You might be a family business. Either way, chances are that if you're here listening to this, you're not a massive e-commerce website. So calling the new bidders will satisfy a number of different criteria that are not directly related to credit card chargebacks. For example, it improves trust. The when people are sign up for your platform and they get a phone call from you introducing yourself and answering their questions, they feel more comfortable with you. If they're a legitimate bidder, they will you'll get a sense, right? You'll know there's an actual person there. They're talking to you. They're asking questions. They're usually happy to receive your call. So those are all signs that the bidder is legitimate. If you call and the phone number is no good, um, that's a sign that maybe you should slow things down a little bit and maybe watch that bidder to see what they're up to. Um, Email is good too, right? So, of course, you're sending out automated emails like, registration emails and maybe other sort of welcome emails. But what you kind of want to do here is what you're looking for is a response from them. So, calling is best. It's really effective. In addition to that, if you email, send the type of email that's going to warrant a response. So let's just say hypothetically that you give somebody a call and you don't reach them, right? You get a voicemail or it's maybe a bad number, something like that. Um, Send them an email and request some type of a response. If you don't get any response, again, watch that particular bidder. Their chances of them being potential fraud go up dramatically if they won't respond to you. Um, the other thing is that if they're emailing you, there's identifiable characteristics. There's, for example, IP address, right? If you don't know what that is, it's okay. It just is a sort of a marker of your internet connection. It's not a great identifier, but if you receive an email from someone and then they also participate on your website using the same IP address, that can be used later. Those logs of those communications, those transactions can be used as evidence when there's a dispute. All right. You'll probably hear me come back to this again because I think it's actually the simplest and easiest thing to do for every auctioneer. Some of these things are a little less easy. Um, so for your credit card gateway solution, of course you have AVS. That's the address verification system. Most of those are turned on by default. At the very least, most of the time those are matched up only on zip code. Okay, so your credit card gateway is not going to normally do a full address check, but they will check the zip code if you have AVS turned on. If you don't have the AVS turned on, I don't know what you're doing. You should definitely turn it on. In those CVVs, those little three-digit codes on the back of the card, everybody has that turned on by default. So it'd be weird if you didn't have that. Some credit card processors have some amount of fraud scoring available. If they do have that, turn it on. You want to be careful here with the fraud scoring and even with the AVS. So normally you want to have you don't want to have a lot of restrictions until you begin to encounter problems. As you encounter more problems, you increase the restrictions. So you want it to be the payment system to be as unrestricted as possible, but it's a balancing act, right? If you have a lot of fraud going on, you increase the restrictions, and then if you don't, if it's a little bit safer for you, less risk, you reduce those. So of course, like most most of the auction systems that are out there, including everything that's created by AuctionMethod, will run these test transactions on credit cards to validate them ahead of time. Some of these they appear differently depending on which auction software platform you're using. In our case, we're doing test transactions, like I think it's like $1, something like that. Somebody gives us their credit card number. Um, and we'll just make sure that the card is capable of a transaction given that information. That transaction is instantly voided, so it doesn't show up. It just happens sort of in the background. Um, and that's super important. If you're not doing any type of transaction verification ahead of time on the credit cards, there's a good chance that you're going to increase the number of chargebacks that you face, right? Or not just chargebacks, but cards that are not capable of performing a transaction, which is the whole point of having them. If you do shipping, and I encourage you to consider whether you really want to do shipping as an online auctioneer, but for some companies, it's absolutely mandatory and you have to. In fact, many auction companies only ship and don't do any pickup. So the problem is that shipping increases the risk of fraud, of course. One of the things that you can do ahead of time is to make sure that the address information that is provided by the client is accurate and that it's verifiable. Accuracy is there are a number of software systems that will help you to ensure that the address information is entered correctly. So, for example, we have with our custom solutions, we use Smarty is the name of the service, and that is an address validation verification system. You usually see it like you're typing an address and it pops up with some suggested addresses. That's one of those systems, right? So you want to, on the one hand, make sure that the address information is good, it's properly formed. But you also, if you're going to be shipping, you should make sure that the delivery point that it's valid. So one of the things that scammers will oftentimes do is they'll give poor information on shipping, enough to get the item shipped to them, but not enough for you to properly validate the address. For example, maybe giving you the an apartment complex, but not giving you the actual apartment number. In many cases, they're using like PO box companies or like mailboxes, etc., that type of thing. I forget what they're called, but basically mail handlers. You don't ever want to be shipping to those. Hopefully what you're doing is actually shipping to the billable address for the credit card. That's not always possible. That would be ideal though, if you ship to the actual billing address. But at the very least, make sure that it's a verified address that you're shipping to. Whenever possible, ask for government ID and proof of address. Some of our clients do this in order to bid. So before you're even allowed to bid, you have to have a valid government ID and in some cases, proof of address. Usually it's just government ID, but proof of address is important when you're doing high value sales. Every auction company is different. The risk tolerance varies. If you're selling, pieces of equipment that are $250,000 a piece, and you're allowing high credit card transactions, then of course you want to do a lot more verification ahead of time. If you're selling retail goods that sell for $1, $5, $10, and invoices are like under $20, $30, you're not going to want to be asking for government ID and proof of address up front, right? So some common sense is needed here. Point is that government ID and proof of address are helpful not just for the registration process. It may be important to include it at the registration process, but you could also just use that when you detect potential scammers, right? So you call somebody, email somebody, and they don't respond. You might suspend their privileges and send them a message saying, hey, I need a copy of your government ID and proof of address in order to verify your account and let you in. Um, at the very least, you can ask for it at pickup, right? So even if you didn't check their ID or anything, when the person shows up to receive their purchases, check their ID. We'll come back to that. The other thing is certain categories of assets you should be really careful with when it comes to credit card transactions. And there may be times that you say that the risk is too high, it's unacceptable. So, for example, if you're selling jewelry or you're selling what are they called? Like collectible coins and that kind of thing. If you're selling gift cards, all of those sort of categories, you might not want to be accepting credit card transactions for that. Certainly not with jewelry and with any type of cash or coins. Um, you can also put like a cap. You can say credit cards are, I'm only willing to risk credit card payments under, say, $5,000. So you can put kind of a ceiling on your exposure by reducing the amount that a buyer can charge on a credit card. Most auctioneers are hesitant to do this, and it's understandable because you want to facilitate more payments and credit cards are convenient for that. But understanding the risk, you're going to have to, you might set sort of a ceiling, and that's based upon your own risk tolerance and experience with chargebacks. But I promise if you get hit with a $15,000, $20,000 credit card chargeback and you're unsuccessful in disputing or winning that chargeback, you will place a ceiling on your exposure. That hurts. I don't care who you are or how rich you are, it still hurts. Um, yeah. And of course, if you're not blacklisting people, bad bidders, you're doing something wrong, right? If somebody initiates a chargeback even once, in my book, they're out. That's a bad bidder. Don't let them back in, right? Just one time. You initiated a chargeback. I don't want to deal with you. If somebody bounces payments or whatever, be wary, right? If somebody shows you who they are, believe them. So if you have bad bidders, either blacklist them or pay attention to them. All right, that's enough about that. Whew, I tried to cram so much into this one slide here. So I'm going to do my best to go through it all without just reading all of the line items here. But I need to stress this, that when it comes to credit card chargebacks, part of prevention is building a solid case in advance, right? So you don't want to receive a dispute notification and then be like, well, wait, what evidence do I have to to dispute this issue, this chargeback? Um, you should have all of this stuff already compiled. Your entire business process should be building a paper trail that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt this person is real. They initiated the transaction. It's their credit card. They were on the hook for it. It was them or one of their authorized agents who came and picked it up, and you have proof along the way for all of this. So, where are you going to lock this proof in? Certainly you're going to, for pickups, you're going to have to do a little bit of work here, right? Most auctioneers, until they get bit by a chargeback, are pretty loosey-goosey with pickups, right? Meaning that somebody just shows up and they say, I'm here to pick up and this is my stuff, this is what I won. A lot of times auctioneers will just believe them. Or they'll maybe they think they're really good and they'll believe them if they have a copy of their paid invoice. A printed paper copy of a paid invoice is not proof of anything, right? Don't accept that. That's not enough. So you should have on your own end, if you're one of AuctionMethod's customers, you have either the Auctioneer Toolbox mobile app that you can use to verify that an invoice has been paid, or at the very least, you should be able to log into your website. You should be able to verify that each buyer who shows up is indeed paid, and they're paid from your point of view, right? Not from theirs. And this one meets with a lot of resistance, but check their IDs, right? It's if you're willing, and this is again one of those risk tolerance things. If somebody shows up and they're picking up, $10 worth of items, maybe you don't care. Just get them out of there. It doesn't matter. If they dispute the transaction later, whatever, you'll eat the $10. It's not worth it. But if someone's coming to pick up a $10,000 piece of equipment, check their ID. There's nothing offensive about checking somebody's driver's license to verify that they are who they said they are. And here's, if you want the number one tip for reducing chargebacks, verify the credit card that was used, meaning that the first time that one of your bidders uses their credit card at an auction, they themselves have to show up in person with an ID and with that physical credit card in their hand. And if they cannot offer you both of those things, they're not allowed to receive their purchases, right? That's part of your terms and conditions and your user agreement. You say to them, the very first time you use your credit card, you're going to have to prove that it's your card and that it's your ID, right? And after that, once you've proven it, you're good. You can bid all you want, and we're not going to check you again, right? That will help a lot. In fact, you'll probably just about eliminate any kind of chargeback risk if you do that. Um, of course, you should always have the buyer sign some type of a pickup confirmation, including date and time. If you're one of our customers, then you can use the Auctioneer Toolbox mobile app. People can just sign on there with their fingers, right? And that'll log the date and time and the signature. You can also just have them sign off on the invoice or some other form of confirmation. And nowadays, there's no reason for you not to have security cameras. And this is another one of those areas of resistance among auctioneers. But it is so easy to have some type of a video camera. You can have it at the gate. You can have it sort of overlooking the area where people are receiving their purchases. But if you can have photographic or video evidence of the pickup, the actual transaction where you're handing the merchandise over to the winning bidder or their authorized agent, that'll help you a lot. And cameras are cheap, cheap, cheap nowadays. Just do it. When it comes to third-party pickups, you really need to have written authorization from the cardholder themselves, naming the pickup person. Again, if you're an AuctionMethod customer, it's built into the system where somebody can go in and tell you that somebody else is picking up their items. In those cases, that written authorization is a part of your record, right? That's something that if there's a dispute later on, you're going to show that the cardholder themselves authorized a specific person whom you verified, right? You checked their ID and got their signature on the pickup form. So, in that case, that's going to be part of the evidence is this written authorization from the cardholder saying that somebody else is picking up their purchases. Don't just willy-nilly release merchandise to anybody who shows up, right? That's a very bad idea, and it's a recipe for a lot of broken hearts in the chargeback world. If you're shipping, I already mentioned, you should be verifying the address, ideally the billing address, and definitely require signature on delivery. I think for everything, personally. I don't think you should be shipping things that aren't valuable. And yeah, I would say signature on everything, but at the very least on valuable items. And of course, I mean, you're going to keep track of all your delivery receipts and tracking information. Again, it's helpful if you have, so even if you have a verified address and you got signature on delivery and you're tracking all of that, somebody can still say that yes, I received a box, but it was empty. It didn't have the item described in it. So for these higher value items, having pictures or videos are better in my book. You can just have a video that is overlooking the packing process where you can see the label, you can see the item going into the box, all of that. That's really helpful. I don't think any auctioneers are really doing that already, but if you're doing a lot of shipping, again, video proof is pretty helpful. So part of the paper trail is all of your communications with the client. I already mentioned you should be calling them, you should be emailing them, you should request, have some communication with them, especially those that seem sort of risky to you for whatever reason. High dollar amounts, or they're out of state, or they're brand new, whatever it is. If they seem that they're a potential risk, increase the communication with them and keep track of all of it. All the emails, the text messages, the phone calls, everything, keep track of it. Make sure that your terms and conditions are clear and present. So your whole as is, where is language that's in your disclaimers, that should be very, very clear. My point, so I already had the last webinar, I think it was the last one, was all about terms and conditions. If you really want, you can go back and watch that video. But you need to make sure that all of your disclaimers and all of the terms of sale are very, very clear and that it's obvious that the buyer accepted it. So you should be logging the time and date of acceptance, like when they actually accepted the terms and conditions, as well as your user agreement. So those are usually two different things, your user agreement and your terms and conditions. Either way, you need to have all of the agreements. You need to have time stamped when they accepted them. Your terms should be clear. And furthermore, of course, without, I mean, I almost feel like this doesn't even need to be said, but item descriptions and pictures, they better be clear, right? Don't hide anything, don't lie, be honest about the assets that you're selling. Provide ample photographic evidence of the items. There's no reason to sell items without a picture or with just one picture. Don't be lazy about this. Take a lot of pictures and describe any problems. If you don't know that there's a problem with it, say so, right? But if there's a scratch on there, if it appears broken, or you have any kind of concern, something that might, cause a buyer to be unhappy with the purchase, say so. Put it in the description, because then if you say this thing has a crack in it, and the buyer accepts things as is, where is, and all of that, you're going to win your dispute. If you don't tell people that there's a problem with the asset and then there turns out to be one, the chances of you losing that dispute go up. Let's see here. Oh, last but not least, the billing descriptor, that means the thing that shows up on the credit card statement for the card holder, it needs to be very clear. So if your descriptor is Acme ABC, and you're actually, whatever, John's Fine Mugs, Auctioneers, and Liquidators, you need to change that descriptor so it's recognizable. Some of the time, people are just saying, I don't recognize this charge because they don't have any idea who it is. So make sure that those descriptors are recognizable. So you got a dispute. There's an actual chargeback. You get a notice. Now it's time to do something. So how are you going to respond to the dispute? I'm actually going to start at the bottom right here with the common mistakes to avoid. This is more important than the rest of it almost. The most common mistake that I see that auctioneers do repeatedly, and they lose every single time, is that they think that more information is better. And so they'll take everything. They'll create this huge, thick packet. They'll print out the auction catalog. They'll print out entire bidders list. They'll print out, I don't know, like just all kinds of nonsense, right? And they'll package it up and they'll circle things with a red pen, and then they'll make remarks, like little notes. He said, she said, whatever in these documents. It's a huge mistake. That is not at all what a bank wants to see. You have to think about who is looking at this. So chances are that the dispute processor, the person who's handling the dispute, is going to be someone who doesn't even necessarily know anything about online auctions. Or what they do know about online auctions is that the seller is usually the person committing fraud. So they might even be a little bit biased. And they may not understand your business. They don't know you. They don't know what you do. They may not understand your terms and conditions or how you do your sales or what your expectations were. Don't assume that they know anything, right? And don't make them work for it. If you give them a big old stack of unrelated documents, they're actually going to just ignore it, and they're going to side with the consumer, with the card holder. They're not gonna waste their time looking at all your little scribble notes and stuff, trying to make sense of it. They're not an investigator working for you, is my point. And you will lose the dispute. I don't care how righteous you are. I don't care how none of that. I don't care if all of the evidence is buried in that big old thick packet that you you turned in, you will lose your dispute because the person who's sitting there trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong doesn't have time to make sense of all of your gobbledygook. Okay? So in this case, um, please pay attention to the rest of what I'm going to say here. Also, if you have log files like login attempts, IP addresses, and most importantly, prior history, then you need to put that information in there. The biggest mistake that I see is failure to include previous history. So there are rules around what's called compelling evidence, and the most recent rule set around compelling evidence suggests that two or more transactions on a card with a particular merchant will are proof that that person intended the transaction, right? So if somebody's bought from you, twice before, and then they file a dispute on the third one saying that they didn't authorize the transaction, or whatever, if you can prove that they used that same card successfully to purchase from you before, the chances of you winning go up dramatically. All right. So that's what you don't want to do, right? Don't miss the important information and don't send unrelated documents. What do they want to see? They want to see you take this stuff seriously, act quickly. So as soon as you receive the chargeback, the dispute, log the due date, right? And make sure that you submit everything on time. If you're late, it's an automatic loss. Okay, so don't dilly, don't dally, take action immediately. The other thing is that the evidence that you provide, it's not always going to be exactly the same. You're not going to have the exact same process all the time. On each chargeback that you see, every notice that you get of a chargeback, there's called a reason code. The reason for the chargeback. It's a little number, right? And depending on what the reason code is, you want to change the evidence that you're providing, right? So you're tailoring it to whatever that specific claim is. You need to be organized, super duper organized. Like I said, keep out all the unrelated documents. You want to have a nice little short cover letter. You want to have all of your exhibits labeled, and it should be easy for someone who has never met you and doesn't know anything about auctions to understand what your response is. I have seen um, disputes, chargebacks, where I was certain that the merchant was going to lose. I was certain of it. In fact, I told the merchants in multiple cases, you're going to lose this one because you're not, you're not set up properly. But let's at least give you a fighting chance by organizing your packet properly. And then they win. So I cannot emphasize this enough. Take the time to organize and present your information in a very clear, easy to digest way. So that cover letter, it's really important, right? It actually shows that you're serious. It's not just the timeliness, right? Like you're submitting a response quickly and it includes this cover letter, shows that you're serious. And it's just a little summary, right? It addresses that code, the one that we were just talking about a while ago. The example that I put in here, buyer claims they didn't receive, attached is the signed pickup and photo ID showing collection on 10/5. Okay. That's a great cover letter. You don't have to explain that your daddy was an auctioneer and you've been in the auctioneer business forever. And this person, you just know that they're a bad person. None of that crap. Keep all of it out. Speaking of which, keep the tone completely neutral and factual. One of the issues I see besides these unrelated documents is highly charged, highly emotive responses. It's completely unnecessary. Nobody needs to know how angry you are. I promise you, I know you're going to be pissed off when you get a charge back, right? Especially friendly fraud. But either way, you're going to be so mad. You're going to be livid and you're going to be fearful, right? You're going to be worried that you're going to lose money. Use that, translate that energy into preparation, into preparing your evidence. You want to keep the evidence itself totally neutral and factual. Don't put in there about how pissed off you are, okay? It's not going to help you. Oh my God. Somebody should tell me not to create slides that are just all text like this. You can see I put a little graphic up there in the corner. That's cute. But all right. Some policy and platform things that you can do. I'm not going to read all of these things because you can read it yourself. But I want to talk about some things that you can do right away. So one of the points here in the beginning under payments and fraud screening is related to 3D Secure. Now, we haven't touched on 3D Secure at all, but every single chargeback mitigation request that I've ever received includes a discussion about 3D Secure because almost without fail, if you get a chargeback notification, there's going to be on the very first page, there's going to be a block about this big. It's huge. And it's right in the beginning. It looks super serious. And it says, you are not using 3D Secure. And it essentially seems to suggest, the language seems to suggest that you are a loser because you don't have 3D Secure, and that you're not going to win this dispute or any others until you get 3D Secure enabled. Now, I don't, 3D Secure itself is a discussion that would probably warrant its own webinar. I'm not going to do that, but it's basically, let me see if I can describe this properly. 3D Secure is basically a method by which the cardholder essentially verifies that they are authorizing the transaction. So there's older versions of it where the cardholder had to put their PIN number in. That still sometimes occurs. Most of modern 3D Secure is happening in the background, and only in certain cases is the cardholder then presented with something that they have to do to verify that they are in fact the cardholder. 3D Secure offers a lot of promises, and it is good. It is helpful. It's not used throughout North America, or at least certainly not in the United States. It's prevalent in Europe where it's required by law. Um, but there is an increase in the use of 3D Secure and 3D Secure like. So that's a particular type of technology, 3D Secure, but there's other processes that are similar to it and provide similar sort of safety. If your processor has 3D Secure, if your auction system is integrated with a gateway and a processor that provides 3D Secure, use it. It will help, definitely. It'll certainly help with third party fraud, true fraud. It'll help a lot with that. It'll essentially get rid of that. And it'll get rid of most of the I didn't authorize this transaction claims. So it's not going to help you if your checkout process or your shipping process doesn't verify that you handed the goods over, the merchandise over to the cardholder or their authorized agent. So it has its limits, but it's super useful if you have it. Just fair warning, AuctionMethod does not have any 3D Secure enabled payment solutions, but we hope to by the end of the year or early in 2026 through our Fiserv program. Let's see here. I put in big bold letters because I think I need to stress it again. Start calling new bidders. It'll help a lot, and not just with fraud. You won't regret it. It's a good policy, and I encourage you to do that. Let's see if I want to cover any of these other details. How are we doing on time? All right. Let's keep going. Let me see if I can pick up anything else that I actually want to talk about in here. So most of these things I've covered. Yeah. This checklist is really based upon everything that I've already covered. So I'm not gonna re-emphasize all of this, but if you want to, take a screenshot and you can use this as your checklist, or you can email me, daniel@auctionmethod.com, and I'll send you the checklist. All right. I guess one of the points I want to make here is that you don't have to take credit cards. You don't have to take credit card payments for everything. So certain high value categories or certain sales that are really important, you can always refuse credit card transactions. In fact, within AuctionMethod software, at the item level, you can usually disable credit card payments for that particular item. So that could be helpful. I think most companies use that for like firearm transactions where they don't want to take credit cards payments for firearms. All right, which that could be another webinar too. Firearms and auctions is a big deal. The last point here, though, is something that I think is usually missed. But after you receive a chargeback and you've either successfully or unsuccessfully defended yourself, you should do one of these postmortems, right? Where you look at what worked and what didn't work, and then you update your policies, your rules, your software, everything based upon the patterns. Okay. So we've already touched on this, but yeah, there's times where you're going to say no. And I think the overarching point here is not just that you don't have to receive credit cards, but trust your instinct, trust yourself. If there's something that seems fishy to you, slow down, right? One of the problems with auctioneers is that we're really fast and we want to keep things moving and there's time constraints. And we want to believe that everybody's honest. And for the most part, people are in fact honest. So we're not thinking about chargebacks in our ordinary day-to-day business. But certainly, again, when you're dealing with high value or at-risk categories, just don't accept credit cards for them. It's fine. Or enhance your prevention measures, right? Checking IDs and all of that when you're selling these high risk categories. Um, it- Definitely, if you can, do this sort of extra verification with photo ID, proof of address, and all of that, do that when possible. Some of our customers, like I mentioned, have this built into their system actually, where bidders have to submit proof ahead of time before they're allowed to bid. So you want to escalate definitely out of area buyers. First time out of area buyers who are shipping to a different address or want you to release to a third party, be careful. As it says here, pump the brakes and verify. You should be, you should have undeniable proof that that is the card holder. And I'll just stop for a moment here and just say, I have seen instances recently where auctioneers who require identification ahead of time have received identification, and it turns out that the IDs are fake. So um, I think that it's better to use ID verification technology over a human being. A human being is just going to look at a picture of a driver's license and they're going to say it's good. Whereas the technology exists now to make sure that that stuff is accurate and that it's not a fake ID. Yeah, I've seen a number of fake ID and they're good looking ones too. The point is though, they're all out of state and they're all have these weird circumstances where they're asking you to ship to a different address than the card on file, billing address, or they want somebody else to pick it up. So don't trust that. It's gonna bite you, you know? If it works for you, three times, the fourth time it's not gonna work. And I've seen some serious losses. So it's important, right? You want to believe, but don't. Put on the brakes, slow it down, escalate and require verification, especially for out of state, out of area winners who are brand new. Um, let's see here. Yep, third party pickup. You better be clear that the card holder authorized that third party pickup and you want to get a copy of their ID and their signature. Okay. Always get a copy of the third party pickup ID. Mm, yeah, I'm going to stress this one more time. If the risk signals stack up and you can't close the gaps, it's better to lose that sale than to ship or deliver and eat a chargeback. Okay. You can always use cash, wire transfer, or some other method, escrow service, you name it, in order to deal with the payment rather than a credit card. Okay. Let's see here. We have a few more minutes, so I think that we have time to go over the dispute run book. Timing is everything here, and I think that this strategy is going to help a lot, right? So right when you get the notice, you log the information and the due date, right? Like we already talked about. You don't want to have a late response, and so you need to stay on top of this. So right away, immediately within the first 24 hours, just grab all the data, everything you can. The invoice, the payment authorization, proof of pickup, proof of shipping, tracking, documents, buyer communications, everything. Just take everything that you have and put it into one folder. But don't stop there. As you already heard me say, if you take that and you submit it as proof, you're screwed. Don't do that. Okay? Just all I'm saying is you collect all the evidence yourself. Within the first 48 hours, then you're going to look and you're going to say, all right, this is the reason code and this is the evidence we have, tailored to that particular reason code, right? If it says that it's an unauthorized transaction, you're going to look at their login IP, their communication IP addresses. You're going to look at their previous transactions, AVS match, so on and so forth. You get the point. So then within the first 72 hours, there you're gonna draft a short neutral cover letter. We already talked about the cover letter, but you're gonna draft that fairly quickly. And in that cover letter, you're going to respond directly to the code using just a simple sentence and a label and a list of all of the labeled exhibits. So you're gonna have there's the cover letter, and the cover letter says just like one sentence, maybe two, that describes the situation and how you're responding to it. And then you list the evidence, and the evidence is all labeled, right? So, for example, you have their previous login IP addresses. Well, fine. That's labeled Exhibit C, and you'll note that in the cover letter, Exhibit C, log of IP addresses used to log in, and then put Exhibit C in the right place. And definitely before the deadline, you're going to submit that packet through the processor portal, right? So you can make sure that all the information is right. And once you're satisfied with it, it's nice and clean, you're going to submit that. Of course, after you submit it, you're going to track the status, and um, you might even engage the processor if it's a really high dollar value. You can check in with your processor and see if they can do anything to support you. Usually they can't, but it may make you feel a little more comfortable to talk to them. So if you lose, if the chargeback comes back not in your favor, then you might want to consider what's called pre-arbitration. So in most cases, or in many cases, you will be allowed to do what's called pre-arbitration. There's some higher risk there that you might, lose a few $100s. So you don't want to do pre-arbitration or arbitration for low dollar value cases or ones where you're not sure that that you have compelling evidence. But if you are, let's say that you sold a car to somebody and you have all of the evidence. It's clear as day to you that, you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that in fact, that person, that cardholder authorized the transaction and they received it and all of that, and you still lose the chargeback. It's okay. Do the pre-arbitration. And the thing with the pre-arbitration and arbitration is you might still lose. There's a good chance that you'll lose, but you'll learn something along the way. But it will be intensely satisfying to do pre-arbitration and to succeed in that. Anyway, point is that you're not, even if you lose the chargeback dispute, there are still options. Besides pre-arbitration, arbitration, you should notify the police. You can notify if you shipped it, you can notify USPS. There's other channels, right? And you should use all of them. The whole dispute resolution process is just about the credit card transaction. Fraud is still fraud is still fraud. If somebody stole something from you by these means, then whether you win the dispute or not, you can still use the authorities to try to help you out. And again, always run a post-mortem so you can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how to tighten things up moving forward. Okay, some resources. We're coming near the end of this webinar, so some of the resources. I wrote a blog post not too long ago called Winning the Chargeback Battle. There's a downloadable guide in that blog post that could be helpful to you. Um, if you're an AuctionMethod customer, particularly if you're using our Fiserv payment solution, you have access to our chargeback mitigation program, in which case we're going to help you do a lot of this stuff. So you get a chargeback, you let us know, and we will hold your hand and help you to respond to that chargeback and make sure that it doesn't happen again. And my favorite, this is the thing I told you to wait for, okay? So let's see if I can share my screen to this other. One second. So what I'm going to talk about here briefly is the custom GPT, which is a chargeback responder. And let's see here. Hmm. Let me stop that share for just a second. Okay. And now I'm going to share. I think this is it. Here we go. All right, this is it. So if you have ChatGPT, and who doesn't have ChatGPT nowadays, there is a custom GPT made by this person named Kim Mirafuentes, which is awesome. This thing can do a lot of the work for you. You can come in here, you can just talk to it. You can share your chargeback notification with them, and then it'll give you helpful suggestions. You can take your evidence packet, and it'll help you to draft the cover letter. So this tool is super awesome. Chargeback Responder by Kim Mirafuentes will help you a lot. If you're a solo operator and you don't have time for all this stuff that I've been talking about, at least use ChatGPT for this. It'll be helpful. Okay. You could probably have saved yourself the entire webinar and just used this thing, and would have been helpful. I should have told you that at the outset, but I really wanted you to stick around and hear me talk. All right, let's see here if we have some Q&A from our audience. Let me see. I don't know that we have much time for it, but maybe, just maybe. Let's see what we got here. I think most of these things have been answered. Can you talk more about 3D Secure? Hmm. If it's available, use it. I really, we don't have time to go over all of 3D Secure. I understand why it comes up. Again, it's on every single chargeback report. And it seems like it could be super helpful, and it would be super helpful if you had it. We ourselves are going to have something like 3D Secure coming out end of year or early next year. We'll be notifying all of our clients about that. Somebody else says that their chargeback rate is really low, their win rate rather, and unfortunately that's normal. So like I said, about 8% of these chargebacks are won by the merchants. If you do the things that I said today, you're going to have fewer chargebacks and you're going to win more of them. So I encourage you to take it seriously, because nothing hurts quite as bad as losing a chargeback for thousands of dollars. All right, I don't see any other questions here to respond to. I'll just give it one more second to see if anybody else has got anything. Mhm. Very well. Well, again, happy Friday, everyone. Happy Halloween. I hope you are safe and sound with your family and friends today. I really, really hope that you can avoid all future chargebacks. And when you do, if and when you do get one, I hope that you'll follow this advice and successfully respond to it. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.